Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today we have Devon Phillips from MAPS. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you?
Lovely. Happy to be here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Last time I was here, I was pretty sick, kind of fighting for my life. So I'm glad we were able to reschedule it. I feel a little under the weather this weekend. And Joe, I don't know if it's you. I don't know if I'm allergic to greatness. Every time we talk, I'm a little sick, but I'm feeling a lot better.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, man. And you, since we've last even seen each other, you live in Manhattan now, right? Or Brooklyn, is it?
I'm in Brooklyn. I've been here about 6 months. Yeah. So, yes, it's pretty much the last time we saw each other.
Right on. So a lot's happened and a lot to talk about, right? Like last time, I think we were just trying to debrief PS23 in Denver. So now we have a whole slew of things to chat about.
Yeah.
So I guess before we dig into anything, let's chat about you. Like who is Devon? Like, how do you like to pitch who you are and like how you roll into maps?
Yeah, what a deep question. Who knows? Yeah, my name is Devon Phillips. I'm born and raised in West Texas, good old Lubbock, Texas. I've been with MAPS for about 3 years. I'm our community and partnership officer. And my title has changed multiple times since being here. But yeah, I mean, the way I introduce myself is my thing I love about psychedelics is how it kind of moves us as a culture. And my background is in neuroscience, but my love is fashion, art, skate scene, rap music, and how those intertwine and overlap with society. So I try to be the bridge between, we have all this great research that means a ton. But one of my favorite things when I speak at festivals or conferences, I'll ask the group, who's heard the latest study about, TBI or, brain injury and say I began research and one or two or four raise their hand and I'll say, well, who's heard the song LSD by A$AP Rocky? And over half the room will raise their hand. So there's a pathway to psychedelics that's not just research, although research is incredibly important. That we got to make sure there's a bridge for them to mindfully explore themselves and what plant medicines and psychedelics and drugs can do. And I try to be that bridge and that voice, and yeah, be that light for psychedelics.
I love that. And thanks for the effort. And yeah, you've got a lot of interesting connections and all sorts of amazing projects. I remember this summer maps. Was it this summer? The NFL Cleats situation. Can you explain what that was?
Yeah. So yeah, we made our big debut on the NFL stage. John, who's a lineman for the 49ers, who we were pulling for in the Super Bowl, they did a great job and a great game. So the NFL does something called My Cause, My Cleats, and it's where they get to pick a cause, a nonprofit usually. And the NFL makes these really cool custom cleats using that nonprofit's logo and their branding. And then they play with those cleats for one game. And then after that, they auction off those cleats. And then the money from those cleats go to the organization. So this year, John picked us, which was really cool because there's a list of all the nonprofits that NFL players pick, and you see the regular ones, all the largest ones, and you have maps. The word psychedelic just being within the NFL website, the official NFL website. You saw psychedelic signs. So they wore our cleats. They're still for auction, I think, until the 16th, which this will be posted after that. But it was really cool. It was really cool to, we say we want to mindfully mainstream psychedelics, and that word mainstream it's such a weighted word. Like, what does that mean? And, because mainstream can have a negative connotation, mainstream can be whatever. And this was like one of those first really, really big, I wouldn't say first, this was a really big one in a new area and a new demographic of people. It was like, oh, psychedelics are mainstream. Now there's a conversation about, is the NFL a negative or positive thing? And internally, we had many conversations about this, that's what I really love about Maps. Maps is never just like one voice. Like the biggest constructive criticism usually comes within Maps, and we have these great ecosystems where we can talk these things out and pros and cons if we should do something or not. But it was really, really cool to see this NFL player who's incredible. One, be impacted by psychedelics personally. I'm pretty sure he had a friend who was killed by a drunk driver, and he's gone through some personal things that psychedelics really helped him with. And to wear our brand and push our mission on such a large stage. And the 49ers just happened to be first in their division at that point. And they were playing against the Eagles, who were also top of their division, or I think it was 1 and 2. I can't remember. It was just a really, really special moment for us.
That's amazing. And yeah, let's dig in a little bit on the NFL topic before we jump to another one. So I guess January 2023, I had a pretty monster concussion myself. I was on like a 30-second loop, like repeating myself, like couldn't I don't remember anything from that 12-hour period, and it involved some pretty heavy attention. So pretty wild. And I'm still dealing with it like well over a year later. So um NFL is kind of like notoriously a kind of concussion factory, right? Like it sucks. It's not a great situation for the players, but they I think at this point somewhat understand what they're up to. But it's also like, until you have something approximating CTE, how do you really know the consequences? So like what was that conversation like around brain injury internally at MAPS, or how do you like to think about it?
Yeah, it was exactly that of do we support something that causes, is known causes of brain injury. First off, Joe, glad you're okay. We need you around. We need you here. So I'm glad you're still pulling strong. Those are always scary. I mean, the way I look at it is like, look, if we're involved with a player who wants to get a message out about their personal journey, us wanting to help them help others is not us co-signing an organization. We didn't do a direct partnership with the NFL. We weren't saying that the NFL will now be safer because people can go get the psychedelic treatment afterwards. It was someone who came to us who's in the NFL and says, I had my life changed by this. I have a platform. I want others to know who I care about that this is a thing and help y'all. So that's kind
Mm,
of how I see it. It's like, and there's also, I'm from West Texas, right? I have football is a religion where I come from. And there's just a large majority of kids, especially in the BIPOC community, where these NFL players and NBA players are their heroes, all are their male figure, what they see as success. And they play on these teams, and their football team might be their first family. They might come from broken homes. So football to them is not just it's not just a sport, it's something that they get the information from and they build who they are from, and they build that yearbook of what they represent from. So when you can put someone who looks like them and who they want to be like on a stage who is speaking this mindful message, because again, John's not saying, he's not doing the whole like everyone do drugs, and he has a really unique and impactful story, and he used it for healing, and he's just a really good role model. So the way I see it is, again, we're not co-signing the actions of the NFL and their contracts and how they treat their players. What we're doing is we're working with an individual who has a platform, who happens to play football, who can reach a lot of people and relate to a lot of people, who has a powerful story.
I love that. And I think that's a powerful way of going about it, right? Like, do you really turn down that kind of attention when it could really further the mission of helping so many people with these
Exactly.
hopeful
And,
interventions?
and it's kind of like, it's like a slippery slope too. It's like we can't do so much work for veterans and then draw a line at the NFL. It's like to stay consistent about healing for all, and these players do get injured and they do find ways to feel better, and they want to know about it. Like, I'm not going to say no. If John reached out to me and said, I really want to tell people this, I'm not going to tell John no. Like, that just wouldn't make sense to me when there's a chance to have a voice and impact. But I would want to work with John and work with people around him and make sure that message comes out responsibly and do all we can to be a resource. I think that's like a two-way relationship, right? I think when you work with, I hate using the word influencers, but influential people, we're used to like a capitalistic state of a billboard. They're cultural billboards where you say, hey, shout this out. We want to see the return. We
Hmm.
don't work that way. It's a two-way relationship where we want to work with someone as a resource to get them to the point where they feel comfortable about speaking out, and then continue to help them speaking out and continue to be a resource for a really solid infrastructure of education and mindfulness. So we're not looking for people to say, give us some brand recognition. We're actually looking to help people and provide them with the tools needed to be a positive influence to their community.
Mm, that's beautiful. So how does that work? Is there like a kind of like a series of calls or meetups, and you kind of just work on the messaging and kind of get them straight on like how they should, not should, but like what's the safest and like maybe most impactful way to talk about this stuff? Or
Yeah, so that's actually what we're trying to work on now. So like what we're working on now is like a not a cheat sheet, but essentially like a sheet of basic facts. We have our courses, so a lot of times with whoever I'm working with, I'll send them one of our fundamentals courses to get you the basic knowledge about psychedelics. I'll also ask like, what are you interested in? At Master, we have a ton of resources, a ton of people capital to where it's like, I had this. I use psilocybin to get rid of my smoking sensation. Oh, we know a great researcher. If you want to continue that conversation with someone who knows more than me about that, or a cultural conversation you want to have, I really want to know about the impact this has culturally on XYZ. Oh, great. We know this amazing person you can talk to. So it's kind of being that facilitator. We provide any resources we own ourselves to them, be it again, it's our course or anything that we've written up, or if it's individual within our organization. But we also say if there's anything else that we can provide you, we normally know the person or the organization that can, and we try to facilitate that conversation to them also.
That's great. So one thing we didn't yet really name, and I assume everybody knows this, but like MAPS, you work for MAPS. MAPS has been around forever. What is MAPS? Or how do you like to pitch it? I guess we should get down to fundamentals at some point, right?
Yeah, MAPS is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. Thank God it's called MAPS. Yeah, we cultivate medical, legal, and cultural context for the safe and beneficial use of psychedelics. And my side of things, I feel like, is the cultural side. I like to define culture as like, this is not the Webster dictionary, it's a simple one, but I'm a simple man. It's the things that make us us, right? So it is the research, the basketball courts, skate parks, barber shops, salons, the conversations you had at the park, the chess, when you play chess with your friends on the weekends. Like, how do we mindfully get this conversation, education in these platforms? Then we have a policy aspect to us where we have a great policy team who works with policymakers about what does mindful drug policy look like, both for a research medical side, but also just for a people side. Because, as Joe and you and I have talked about a ton, there's a lot of people, maybe most people, who come across this from not in the medical side. And we've had a terrible, is not a good enough word, drug policy for the last all of my existence in some. So it's like, how can we make sure that we create a safe setting where people can explore in a mindful and responsible way? And And then we have obviously the research side. Rick's been pioneering this for us since 1986, be it with MDMA and use in multiple different fashions, and some other psychedelics that we're interested in doing research in the future. So it's just kind of, we try to touch the multiple aspects of psychedelics, be it with people, with institutions, with policymakers. We're a small nonprofit. There's about 30 of us, but we like to do big things. We have an international therapist education program that's launching. We have our first responders program where we partner with Denver, Colorado, and training first responders on how to deal with psychedelic emergencies. We have our fiscal sponsorship programs. There's a whole host of things that MAPS we're doing this year that we're able to do from our amazing supporters. So that's a little bit about MAPS. We also go to music festivals. We're at conferences. I mean, it's the only place I know where I can headbang with my coworker and then be at a neuroscience conference all within 5 days.
That's pretty good. I love that. And let's talk a little bit about like the big news at MAPS, right? There's all sorts of progress happening with the MAPS PBC, now Lycos. Can you describe what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a celebration. I mean, we've been Lycos, which has been almost 38 years in the making. It's was the pharmaceutical side of MAPS. Now it's its own thing. Is going to hopefully be able to pursue what we all been hoping for: MDMA treatment for MDMA assisted therapy for PTSD. Um, they're going to be the ones carrying this out. MAPS is always going to be supporting. Um, Yeah, so it's essentially just a pharmaceutical break that we've been wanting for the last 38 years, and it's something that Rick's really been pioneering, and we will continue to do our own research on our own side with whether with MDMA or we're looking possibly at ibogaine. We have our grant from Michigan that we're trying to pursue cannabis for PTSD. So MAPS will always be a research hub. A nonprofit hub of innovation that Rick likes to call it. But Lycos will be the one who is now carrying out the MDMA assisted therapy to help to millions and millions of people.
That's great. So, the name Lycos, I had to look it up. For me, it's like the old school search engine that was like pre Google, before Google got hot. But I'm a little old. I have some arthritis. But what do you know anything about the name? Like why they were picking that one?
Yeah, I mean, so there's if you want to go into their website, they'll talk about the symbol. Lycos is Greek for wolf. and they'll talk about the symbolism that a wolf will represent, which I fully agree with and believe that's one reason. But a lot of people don't know that a large influence on Rick is Rick used to raise a wolf. It was a large part of his 20s, and he associates it with a big part of who he is today and the patience and how to deal with an animal and how to deal with people. So it's also a nod to our founder, Rick Doblin, um, the wolf man himself. So Lycos is a mixture of the symbolism of what a wolf represents, but also a big nod to Rick.
Love that. And yeah, the wolf story is so amazing. Is there a film that like people got to see to like get some ed on the wolf?
There's some interesting content that I hopefully can make into some t-shirts one day of Rick and the wolf.
Yeah, yeah. He was a real stud for a while there. It was wild seeing those photos from his
Hey,
20s. I'm like, good
Rick was a
grief, Rick.
stud. Rick was
Yeah.
a stud. I will say that. Rick got it going on. He's still a stud now. Rick, if you hear this, you're still a stud now. This 20-year-old Rick was also a stud. You've been a stud your whole life, Rick.
Um so yeah, so like for people, like people had like a little bit of confusion around why maps needed to separate into a PBC, and then also like why the name change and all this stuff. For me, it was relatively logical. Like a biotech life sciences company needs to have autonomy to operate and like be able to interface directly with the FDA and regulators outside the FDA so that they can bring this thing through all the trials that are required, right? Was there anything more to that story that's worth mentioning so people kind of understand it a little better?
I'll let Lyco staff fill you in if there's anything more. That's pretty much it on our side. And two, like there's two. Although the main mission is healing for all, right? There's still things that MAPS need to do on our side as a nonprofit that involves more research into other things. That involves stuff that at PBC that's focused on one thing can't do. And there's things with the FDA and approval and the way to really scale this and move this thing forward where it needs to be that only a PBC, Lycos now can do. So it's a very strategic thing of just two great organizations, two organizations trying to do big things, and they need to be in their own lanes to really achieve these big goals that we're trying to go after.
Yeah, agreed. Like biotech is really intense. And,
Politics is really intense.
to
You
be,
know, I
yeah,
Yeah, we're still a close organization to each other. I mean, it's we hold a majority of the board seats. Like it's something that we have still a large influence on. Even with that, like that's still a whole nother world to me. Luckily,
hmm
our leadership here knows a whole lot more than me in that relationship. But still, like when you deal with the FDA, when you deal with that pipeline over there, it's just a whole nother world. This is a whole nother. There's so much more red tape that is for the most part needed. That's just a whole different mindset, different strategies. And if you try to do that all within one organization, you're just going to not get anything done. And that would be the worst thing to happen, right? It's getting nothing done. So yeah, it was strategic purposes. So both organizations can thrive and again, to try to help as much people as possible.
yeah, that's great. Um, at Maps, there's some interesting other work going. I remember years and years ago, there was a lot of talk about, the next project to develop is ibogaine. I'm sure that perhaps shifted a little bit, just figuring out what is the research required to develop this thing that's really gonna, I think, change the planet in a lot of interesting ways. Is there any other kind of like major projects or anything you can say around like drug policy work more generally?
Yeah, I mean our policy team, led by Izzy is always so one the first responder program that I mentioned earlier about training first responders in Denver, Colorado, that has been led by our policy team. So they have been
Mm,
helping build these great programs. And it's incredible to see firefighters and police force get on Zoom and talk about one, their psychedelic use, and then two, how to treat the differences between psychedelic emergency and a regular emergency. That just blown my mind. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, would I've seen the police force teaching their own force about the empathy that you should have and how to recognize a psychedelic emergency and how it should be handled different, I would never believe you. So that's something that our policy teams has been leading for a while now. That it's one of our main priorities for this year in projects, and we're hoping to scale that out past Denver. We're hoping Denver is a great pilot, and we can show other states and other counties that this can be scaled and this is really useful. So that's something that we're super excited about and been working on this year as a priority. Then what I mentioned is our international education our International Therapist Education Program, and our Fiscal Sponsorship Program. Our Fiscal Sponsorship Program we've been doing for a while now. There's a lot of great organizations that have came from our Fiscal Sponsorship Program that are now their own 501. And this year we're really trying to highlight that and platform that even more. We just had a website that dropped that features all our programs that are involved. There's some great storytelling strategies you're going to have that are going to be able to them to shine a light and tell about the organization. So again, MAPS has never tried to be like an Amazon or Walmart. There is no psychedelic organization that is going to be the answer that should be the answer. I think our greatest strength is facilitation and trust. So we're really trying to figure out ways, what is the best way we can facilitate other organizations, other voices, other programs out with the help and success that we've had. And this fiscal sponsorship is one of the largest ways I think we can do that. And then, yeah, we're still nailing in the details of the International Therapist Education Program. So I would love to fill in more on that later on, but that's another large priority for us this year also. And then we are dropping a membership, a MAPS membership program will be open to the public in June. And the idea behind that was, we're donation based and we have large goals that are only going to be met if we continue to have the great support that we've had and hopefully maybe more in the future. But we also want to reciprocate the love and the energy that we're getting. So we thought, all right, we have all these resources at MAPS. We've had these conferences. We have all these bulletins and videos. How can we put that in one place, allow someone to access that, and still have some type of donation service to us? So we created what is a membership program, which when you sign on, you'll get access to our online courses. You'll get discounts to our conferences. You'll get discounts to other partner conferences, music festivals. We have a monthly speaker series where we'll have people like Rick Doblin, we'll have researchers come on, we'll have community leaders, we'll have athletes, musicians, and every month we'll have some type of speaker series to speak on their topic. There'll be either hour-long presentations, we have a policy talk every month with Izzy, which will be a 30-minute update, 30-minute Q&A, town hall style. So just another way that we can, one, continue to update and educate the best we can to people. And then two, at the same time, be able to raise money and continue to push. Because that's the largest goal, right? Like we want to provide the greatest membership experience possible. But bigger picture is the more resources that we have, the more we can help educate, the more programs we can launch, and the larger we can do these things. And that's the ultimate goal. So we're hoping that this is the give we can give to others in return for helping us so much and scaling that help if possible. But it's gonna be dope. I'm excited. It's been one of the biggest projects I've been put on since I've been at MAPS here in the last 3 years. We got some amazing speakers and people who are going to be involved. So whenever you're listening to this, remember in June, sign up for our MAPS membership program. I promise you it's going to be an incredible platform.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing about all that. That's fun. There's another big MAPS project that y'all just announced, I think earlier today, February 13. Is that right?
Yeah, today. It's so funny, Joker. You mentioned earlier, the last time we talked, it was debriefing Psychedelic Science 2023. Today, we just announced Psychedelic Science 2025. We're coming back, baby. June 16th to 20th, Denver, Colorado, Denver Convention Center, same place. We're doing it again. It's today's announcement. We are just getting started on kind of building it, getting a head start on the partners needed. But yeah, we're so excited to be back. I mean, this first one was so incredible. I mean, I didn't fully integrate until probably like 2 weeks ago, maybe yesterday. Who knows? It was such an amazing time that we learned a lot from, and we just want to be able to do it and learn from all the great things we learned from, even the mistakes that we learned from, and make this 2025 one, which will be our fifth edition, it'll be our fifth Psychedelic Science Conference. Make it even better, make it more accessible, make it larger for more people to come, have more people hear about it. The super beautiful thing was this last, Joe, you know this as well as I do. Most conferences I've gone to in the past, psychedelics are great. I mean, there's some really great conferences. Horizon's incredible. There's some great conferences. But I'm always 1 to 2 degrees away from knowing the person, right? I know the person, or I'm really close to the organization they work to, know their boss, know their coworker, know the researchers they work with. It was so amazing to be at this conference. And I would ask, would I recognize 80% of people? And I'd ask, how they are in the community, what they do, and like, oh, I'm a mechanic in Florida. You're like, amazing. That is great. That is exactly what we want. I love people who are in the psychedelic space coming to us, but I love even more someone who is not quote unquote in the industry being here. That's the goal. Like that's the way that we mindfully mainstream these things is get them in the car mechanic conversation, right? Get them into someone who works at a restaurant in between waiting tables. They're talking about this. Like that's how we push this. So that was incredible to hear that. So we want to not only replicate that this next year, 2025, we want to scale that.
Agreed. That's awesome. So, what do y'all think? More people? Same amount? That was so many people
That was a
last time.
lot of people. We're still discussing the numbers. Like,
Hmm.
we're not a conference company, right? We're not like here to just get bodies in a chair for the numbers, right? Like, we want to balance both the experience. Of course, we want a lot of people there to have one. There's a financial responsibility, but also there's an experience responsibility. We don't want it to be where your experience is now lacking because you can't get into a room or you're just overstimulated. So there's still a lot of work going in on the back end for us. We're still having these conversations about how many people we think we should have there, how can the setup be effective, how can we platform as many people as possible who need to be platformed. And so yeah, that's all still in the works. But I agree, that was a lot of people last year. Luckily, that building is big, but we'll have those numbers here hopefully here soon.
Yeah, that's nice. I'm excited to learn more. I will be there. Can't wait.
Joe, you better be there. I know where you live.
Don't tell anybody. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. I think it's yeah, it's gonna be really crazy. It's like the scene will have developed like that much more. Um, organizations have gone and came since then, so it'll be like a really interesting refresh and new look at what's going on. I'm excited. It's gonna be really fascinating.
It'll be yeah. I mean, I feel like there'll be some not leftover. There'll be some similarities from 2023 conversations, but I feel there'll be a whole new fresh face of ideas and conversations and things happening. Obviously, will be in 2025. Hopefully, this year MDMA assisted therapy being passed through. Hopefully, the conversation too about what's next from an actual business standpoint will not be theoretical. It'll
Hmm.
most likely be in practice. Hopefully, so yeah, I'm super excited about the aspect of that. And then two, what I'm seeing in the space, what I'm loving is just how can I say this? I don't want to get you in trouble. Get me in trouble. I
I
think
love
we're.
trouble.
I know, Joan. That's why when I get on with you, I'm like, okay, Joe and I can talk the talk, so I got to make sure we keep it there. Um, I think we are getting, there is there's a fad state of everything that's popular, right? We did that with
Hmm.
tech, VR, the diets, whatever. And there's a lot of people who come up in that, and they get to be quick, influential speakers because no one knows about it. So any hint of more information you know about it, you are now more platform, right? You have more of a
Hmm.
following. You can hit that short stint. I think 2025 will be the year, and I'm already seeing that there are just some really intelligent, incredible people in the space who have found their voice, who have been doing it for a long time, and the new people are finding them. They're now knowing enough to be like, oh, like these are the great names, like these are the amazing people that are really down to earth and know from a cultural standpoint, research standpoint, and these newer people are getting a little more educated of finding these really bright lights. So I think 2025 will just be a great platform for these people who have found their voice and have really shined lately with this everything that's been coming up to just kill it, to get on stage and have these amazing conversations, these events, and just really provide some great resources.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so many amazing new people that we just don't even know about yet. Like we've prided ourselves on at Psychedelics Today on just having as many small voices as possible on. Because, as amazing as Horizons was, you could only see 10, 20 people, and there's hundreds of people doing awesome stuff. And, that's kind of why PS23 was so dope. There's so much room for so many people. Still, we couldn't get it. You couldn't get everybody on stage because how could you? It's not possible.
Yeah, I still haven't even seen every talk from psychedelic science. There's still talks I haven't even seen because there was 300 speakers. So yeah, it's an incredible thing. So we're super excited to get some new people, some strong voices on stage to really hold it down.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Are you uh can you speak to like one new development that you're just really excited about generally in the space?
One new, hmm. Okay, I'm gonna get broader.
Sure.
A conversation that I have been excited I'm hearing more is I've been hearing more and more talk about including drugs as a whole within the psychedelic conversation. I think
Yeah.
that was like a fine line that we were walking a year and a half, 2 years ago, and people knew in here were like, oh no, I just microdose mushrooms or I just, do whatever. And I'm hearing more and more in these groups I'm talking in about drug policy as a whole and how even if I only like doing psychedelics, that should be involved. A responsible drug policy as a whole should be involved within the psychedelic conversation. A lot less exceptionalism. Now, don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
It's still spread out through the space, and it's happening faster than I thought it would. Now, it could be I could have a location bias. I don't think New York's the most progressive with drug conversation, but I'm having a lot of good conversations in here about how do we approach that. And I think sadly the increasing rise in this overdoses that we're seeing every single day, and a lot more people are talking about testing their drugs and fentanyl test strips. Dan Safe has played a huge role in kind of mainstreaming that, and a lot of other organizations too. Don't want to leave them out. I think there has been this new reality that has somewhat been pushed by research, but also a lot been pushed by fear, where this conversation has to happen now. It can no longer
Yeah.
just be on a sideline. Like it has to, everyone is starting to know someone who has passed away from an overdose or they're a family member who knows somebody. So I think this conversation has been pushed in front of us and it needs to be had because there has to be some type of solution.
Yeah, I'm with you. We've chatted a lot, so we know that's like a good issue for both of us, and it's really important. People are so at risk of dying or getting really hurt because of the way drug policy has been done in this country for so long, and it's just an ugly scene and a really ugly stain on our history that we should be proud of, kind of sometimes here in America, but yeah.
Yeah, it's and it really gets into the conversation of, and we've talked about this a lot. It's like psychedelic or drug use in general for healing and in general for pleasure. And there are conversations that I have where people they feel bad that someone passed away, but they said, hey, they were using it to go to a dance show or whatever. They should know better. And it's so weird to me that like as human beings, our experiences are very little tied to a healing quote unquote aspect of like a clinician or a therapy, right? We live most of our lives in the world of laughter. We live most of our lives in crying or in these conversations we have with people. When you talk about when you ask a regular person, an adult, about hey, what made you, right? They hardly will say a class. They hardly will say like my PhD thesis, right? They will say, going out of town with my friends. They will say shooting hoops with my friends in my neighborhood. They will say like if skateboarding with my friends at the skate park. Like those conversations, those ties, all that major, that's pleasurable, right? So like when someone is to explore this mindfully in a safe container, they should be allowed. It could be just as healing. Me going to a music festival and being in a safe container and being around people who I trust who hold space for me can be just as healing, has been just as healing, I feel like, than when I go to therapy, which I love my therapist. I love therapy. But yeah, so I try to make sure that we are careful how we talk about like pleasure versus healing use and like how we separate those two, where it's like everyone has the right to do it in quote unquote pleasure. Again, if it's in a mindful and safe container, but that's almost just as important as well, I won't say just as because this is where I can get in trouble. It's important to me um, as other factors because yeah, those are really really healing experiences. People deserve to
Hmm.
have that option.
Yeah, I had a conversation with a PhD neuroscience person somewhat recently. He usually teaches at med schools and talked about how we need to reframe the addiction conversation quite a bit too, in that uh, people after they come out of a really hard scenario find something that works for them, and they just found probably the first best thing that worked for them, and that was it. And it ended up in a bad situation. There's so much cultural context to that, so much of our not ideal federal establishment around like healthcare and other topics that led them down often a hard situation. But then there's Carl Hart, which everybody should read both of his books, High Price and Drug Use for Grown-Ups, to get a little more educated there. I have a question, Devon. Did you have a chance yet to see the film? I just watched it on Thursday of last week, A Table of Our Own.
Yes. Yeah. Powerful. I mean, power. Yeah. Yeah, we had a screen actually too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's
I've been
yeah.
buds with Ayuze for a bit now. I'm just really like amazed at how well that film came out, and it's just a totally different conversation, right? It's one that needs to be had, and I think that's now a cornerstone of like the cultural conversation, or at least I hope it is from now on.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's also just a powerful group of people who did it. And yeah, you know how I feel about Dr. Carl Hart. I mean, that he's one of the most influential. Talk about courageous, right? And talk about like walk the walk. He has both the research background. He publicly does these things to show, there's a difference between being a theoretical armchair speaker, right? And then someone who
Hmm.
actually holds their own, has the research behind it, and shows why the chemical is just a chemical and the relationship is the main thing. And there's other layers of be it oppressive, systems or just other societal factors that actually lead up to what is an addiction or what is something else. But you can never blame a chemical for being a chemical.
Hmm. Hmm. They're quite amoral and don't have much agency. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think the problem with this conversation with many, which is not even, I have a ton of empathy for this conversation in general because we have had such bad drug education coming up that how can you expect anyone to be able to go into this conversation and be like, oh, I get this. I can logically see these things, right? Like, of course, our drug education has been terrible. So the approach will probably be terrible too. So I have a ton of empathy for anyone
Right.
who brings this up, even when I disagree with it. But I think one of the larger problems is like when we talk about drug freedom, we are then seen as drug co-signing for everybody. As in me saying heroin should be legal is me. I had someone on, I think it was X, whatever. They were like, um, me saying heroin should be legal and it's like we should be legal. And like, well, heroin's a lot, heroin has more dangerous aspects to it. And it's like, would you allow someone to, what did he say? I'm missing to it. Anyway, essentially, it said that it was me saying that everyone should go try it and it should be good for everybody because it's just a chemical. It's just a chemical that doesn't hurt anybody. I understand potencies, and people in the space understand potencies, and people in the space understand that if you are in some of a darker, repetitive loophole of a space, there are substances or things you should not try. It's not an open-ended come one come all situation. It's building a container that is set for proper education and proper progress. It's not inviting people to try things. We're not going to be at bodegas. I say bodega now, I'm in New York. I don't know if you got that. Just
That's nice.
handing out drugs, right? Like, no, it's like, what is the best way as a society that we can build safe containers? One is policy and treating things as things and focusing on relationships is the best way to get there in my eyes. So if that's the case, you got to look at these individual things as objects and build containers around them. It's not me saying, again, all these drugs should be legal. Therefore, I want everyone who's involved to go try them. That is nuts to me. Like I believe cake should be legal too. It is, but not everyone should eat cake every day. And I like it. Like is all relationship with something you have. And just to me, like these things are objects that you can have relationships to. So it's not a pass for me saying that like, hey, you should all come try this. It's just me saying that if our goal as society is to build a setting that creates healthy relationships, you have to build context that allows you to view things as relationships first.
Agreed. Um, yeah, there's so much there, and we could spend probably 4 hours on this. Last thing I'll say, like, is a major hero to the conservative elements of the country. Milton Friedman said that if we wanted to create like this insane drug war situation that we have, like all the violence, the cartel situation, all this stuff, this is the legal situation we would put in place to design that. Like all the incentives are perfect for it. And if people want to dig deeper in that, there's an amazing book, Narconomics, that digs into that from an economic perspective, which is really helpful to help give some context around that stuff. So it's just, yeah, like we've spent billions on the drug war, and now we need to, including miseducation. Now we need to spend a good amount to get us back on track so we understand how to deal with this stuff better. So in that vein, Devon, there's an event coming up in Texas. There's some sort of celestial alignment, perhaps. What is this thing?
It can be called that, yes. The meeting of the psychedelic minds. No. So yeah, the eclipse is coming. And so there's Texas Eclipse. It's a big music festival that essentially follows the eclipse. So wherever I believe is you can see it closest, I want to say. They hold their music festival there. There's tons of artists who are going to be there, but we're also celebrating as MAPS our 38th anniversary. So a lot of the staff's going to be there. We have a psychedelic speaker series. Rick's going to be talking. Izzy's going to be talking. We have Sutton's going to be there talking. We have people from, I believe, Dance Safe might be represented there. There's going to be a lot of our kind of partner organizations there. So we're going to have a day full of 10 to 12 hours of psychedelic conversations. And then we're just going to celebrate 38th anniversary, great music. There's all types of music there. So it's a really cool place. And it's in my, home state, Texas, which every time I have an event at Texas, it kind of blows my mind. I'm in the South talking about how drugs should be legal. This is really so the funny thing about me is like this might just be ignorance. Like I feel safe when I'm down there as long as I'm not driving.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, the movement's big and the movement's bigger than myself. And I am extremely drug entitled. And what I mean by that is I have an incredibly loving family who has been so supportive of me even when I went down this route of like, hey, I want to talk about this. Hey, I've had these experiences with these drugs. My mom and whole family supports me no matter what I do. I have an incredible friend group who's the same way. I have an organization not only supports me, helps progress me in the same mindset. Other than my life just sucking for a bit, I don't think I would lose any of that. If anything was to, I think my organization would stand behind me. I know my family would stand behind me. I know my friends would stand behind me. So if I know that, man, there's no reason for me not to keep on pushing this message and trying to be that light. Like I hope in this world it doesn't happen. I'm not wishing this at all whatsoever. I don't want to spend any time anywhere like a jail or anything. But I do know with this mission and what I can do with the infrastructure that I have, is this worth doing? So we're gonna make it rocking in Texas. I'm not worried about it. Come out to Texas Eclipse. I think there's still tickets. Come celebrate with us. We'll have a MAPS camp. So anyone who wants to come kick it and hang out with the MAPS crew, you come camp with us, camp with all our friends, and just have a really good time to celebrate celebration, celebrate us. Have some fun. We live in a research-heavy, study-heavy, argument-heavy world, and psychedelics is beautiful. You should always criticize, influence, always love that. But we should celebrate more. It's as simple as that. We should celebrate more. This is a fun thing. This is a groundbreaking thing that we're doing. This is a hard thing that we're doing. Let's just come together as people and let's make it fun.
I pulled up the website. One of my friends said, let's go. I'm like, oh, maybe it's in April. I don't really want to leave the mountains yet. And I pulled it up. I'm like, holy shit, this lineup looks crazy.
It's crazy.
It's so big. Shocking, really. So people should check it out. I was, twofold. I've left the mountains too much already this winter, so I'm going to stay till the end. And then I was like, shit, do I really want to go to Texas for this? Like, you're from Texas, you get it a little bit more than I do. I'm confused by Texas. I'm from the Texas of the Northeast, New Hampshire, which is it's not as contentious. But it's like I was like, shit, like I have to at least tell people to be a little safer there than normal. So you say you're going to only SoCal festivals, right? Like this is different. Like be a little safer, operate a little more cleanly, all that kind of stuff, folks. And always test way ahead of time.
Always says. I just want to let the audience know that if Joe is considering leaving the mountains for this event, that just shows how dope this event is. It takes a lot for Joe to leave the mountains. So I want y'all to know that if he's thinking about leaving it, y'all should definitely consider it.
I'm glad you know that. Yeah, it's wild. It's like if this shit was in Colorado, I'd be there like tomorrow, no doubt. So, yeah. So, yeah, go. It's gonna be awesome. I guarantee it. Like everybody was talking about Oregon Eclipse, like it was the best thing they ever went to, and I didn't go, of course, but they were over the moon about it. And if it's anywhere close, which it looks like it's gonna be even better, like it's gonna be the shit. So that's great. So anything else on like the music nightlife thing that you like to talk about?
I mean, there's a few things like we're trying. So I have this campaign I'm trying to put together this next year called "Music is the Bridge." One of the greatest things that I've heard from a mentor is like no one buys a yearbook that they don't see themselves in. And I was a single child. I was raised by music. I listened, watching Soul Train with my Meemaw in the mornings when I would stay over there. Like listen to hip hop with my pawpaw, listen to Elvis with my grandpa. My mom's name's Priscilla because my grandpa had such a huge passion of Elvis. So a lot of it influenced who my friends were and like the conversations that I had and what I wore to school and like who I was. So I just know the impact that music has, both from an outward perspective, both from a healing effect when you go to a music festival or a concert. That's its own, and also too just like the personal language that or that music is able to transcend an individual and move others. So we're really trying to push this here at Maps of working with artists and musicians, a mixture of doing some possible musical fundraisers. I'm talking to this is on the low right now. We're hopefully get this approved, but there's some things at Red Rocks that we think we can do for some fundraising opportunities that we'll have with some artists there. Hopefully, some possible things at Meow Wolf that we could possibly do. So, from the actual fundraising side of things, using these great concerts, these great artists to both throw an amazing event, but also have a fundraiser side of it for Maps. And two, on the flip side, having these speaker series with musicians talking about both their personal usage and their healing journeys and just their usage in general. It doesn't have to be like a healing journey. I want to really push that also. Like, I want it to be a learning experience, but it doesn't have to be like, I had mad depression, took mushrooms, and now I'm healed. And I love those stories, and I want to hear all those stories. But I also want to increase the welcoming to others. Like you don't have to have I was felt like dying, took this, now I don't. You could be like, I was just stuck. I was just stuck. I didn't know whatever. Right? Or I was feeling fine. I took some MDMA and I was able to tell my mom I loved her again. Like it doesn't have to be whatever. So, anyways, so allowing musicians to come up and speak and use their voice to just again push this message further. So yeah, some really cool things. And also, we're at music festivals. We've been doing this series called Psychedelic Coming Out Stories. It's a workshop we do with music festivals where me and a coworker, Steven, will go up there and we'll talk about our experiences of how we came out to our friends and family and coworkers about psychedelics and how we were able to go through that path and strategies we were able to use and lessons that we learned, and then we break out into into groups, and we have 3 4 5 people that'll talk to each other about their psychedelic coming out, if they want to, why they haven't, why they did, the struggles that they had. We have them do that for 10 to 15 minutes, then we come back, speak a little bit more, and then we the last one's really powerful lately is we get you back out there, 3 4 people, and then we say each one of you take 2 or 3 minutes. And if there's someone that you can't talk to right now, say it's your grandpa or your father, have one person play as the father and tell them what you would like to say to them.
Mm.
And it's been really, really powerful of them being able to play that out of like what they want to say to them and why they haven't been able to say things to them. And yeah, and it's at the end of it, we've had people come, and there's no better experience. I would tell you, there's no better experience after this workshop that night. We did one at Ursa Major with Grizz. Grizz is playing, and right before like a really, really dope drop, you're already feeling like all this love because you're around this music that I already, love. Right before it drops, someone for your workshop comes into you, is like, hey, like that workshop really changed my life. Like I'm in tears, and then being able to embrace that person, and then the music drops. Like this is what I live for, Joe. This is what I live for. This is what I live for. Being with people in these settings, creating it's a safe space for them to be them, for them to heal, for them to have conversations, and then celebrate with some music, Joe. Come on.
Hmm.
I put that in my veins. Put that in my veins. So, yeah, we've been doing those workshops. We're hoping to scale that out, do a couple more this year at some bigger festivals, maybe Bonnaroo, and continue to spread the good word with some good sound.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that it's not just EDM festivals or like jam band
Oh
stuff. Like
no.
you're including the rap festival series too. Like that's extraordinary.
Yeah, we just talked about, yeah, we wanted, if I can get into the, if we can get into the rap scene, it's so hard to get somewhat in the rap scene, and we talked about this too. And this is like, I don't have a problem with microdosing. I big fan of microdosing and microdosed for a long time. It helped me with my Adderall addiction, and it has helped me tremendously. Big microdose proponent. I don't talk about microdosing that much. One, because there's already hundreds of people who are talking about microdosing, and I it's harder to talk about microdosing within my black communities because you go in and you say, "Hey, you know how like that drug thing has ruined and broken apart your families for like the last 70 years?" Yes. Okay. Well, have y'all tried taking a little bit of a drug every single day to help fix that? I promise the cops are cool. Like, or not, it's just like a, so like for them to feel comfortable with that, it has to be a policy change you feel comfortable with. So I talk about macrodosing more. 'Cause if you saw the macrodose situation, you saw the microdose situation. If you can macrodose, you can microdose. That is not guaranteed the opposite way. You could build legislation allowing you to have the amounts to microdose, but still be in trouble for the macrodose context, and that doesn't fix the larger problem that we're trying to from a system standpoint. All that to say, within the rap scene, hip hop scene, it is a majority black influence, and getting out and having people comfortable talking about their drug use when they already feel persecuted by the police force is a little more difficult, which is very understandable. So yeah, we're trying really hard to figure out the best way that we can, one, be a resource for them to feel comfortable, guide that learning pathway, help guide their evolution, and then eventually, however they want to come out to their platform and their friends, help be a resource and help them with that.
Beyond that, like law enforcement angle, like which is obviously substantial. Is there any like gigantic difference you see in the way the topic's received at a rap festival versus like EDM fest?
No, I but I don't think it's a fair comparison. Okay, let me rephrase this. Yes and no. No, because the way we approach festivals usually is like they tell their stories. And once you get people talking about them, they can easily relate to others, especially who look like them, to where they feel comfortable. We're not telling them to like, again, we're not just preaching Johns Hopkins studies for them to then share with their friends, right? They immediately start telling something about them. They're at the same music festival, so usually they have something in common. So the conversations are relatable. So it's already like a free flowing, comfortable aspect to that conversation. Um, the other parts of it, I mean, there's a large portion of cannabis conversation about policy and to continue to work on that, especially at rap settings, which is also true and something we're really passionate about. And there's just also when the black community and the rap community, there's just a better understanding of the depth needed for policy change because of the effect it has on them. So there is more conversation geared towards the risk of doing this and the things that they've heard because I'm not going to go black and white crowds. I think that's way too simplistic. But for those who haven't been persecuted in the past by drug law, their main questions they ask are more about myths they've heard over, like, be it psychosis, which is still a valid myth, or like, I heard you can see colors, or it's a very experience base. And the other side who's been persecuted is a very risk base of what can happen outside the experience. Not even talking about being under a substance itself. It's like what can happen before, what can happen after. What happens if you do get caught? There's a different perspective when approaching taking a substance based off community and their history of drug persecution.
Right on. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I see how you mean. It could be like a little bit simplistic because there's so many different scenes with so many different makeups and like yeah, it's a big spectrum for sure. So have you heard this news? This was years ago. I might have brought it up to you. There's a group in the UK, the Loop, who years ago implemented drug checking at a festival, and they reduced hospitalizations by 80% by introducing testing. And they actually just finally got a permanent facility in the UK to
Mm.
offer drug checking services. I think 7 days a week, which is crazy. So
Huh.
um, I wonder if there's any pathway to have that kind of thing available in the United States. Like, we're so moralistic in a strange, somewhat perverse way that, maybe, but I don't know. Like, have you seen anything like hopeful in that direction?
Hopeful as in the people who are striving to do this, yes. Hopeful as in like policy changing. Eh. I mean, I look at the world, or I look at America in a few different fragments. Like you always have like your Oregons and your Colorados and stuff, but if Texas isn't getting closer, if Kentucky isn't getting closer, if Florida isn't getting closer, I mean, these are largely populated areas that are going to have problems no matter what. Um, I think there's, I think there's a way that festivals can change, and that's we're America runs on money. And if we get enough of these headliners to say, I'm only performing here if there's a drug checking section, they're not going to say no to, Bad Bunny. I don't think Bad Bunny would do that, but you get enough of these artists caring about what's happening in the world, and they say, I will perform here for my same price. Something changes there, but only if there is a harm reduction table. I guarantee you, if festivals see that they're going to be losing, because it's a liability base, right? A lot of these festivals say no to some drug trafficking because they don't want to be responsible if the drug event does happen, because now they have one more degree of connection to something that's happened. But if you lose the money on the front end, saying like you can't even get artists unless you have this, I guarantee you there'll be a fire in some of these people's butts to where you'll see a whole lot more harm reduction, drug checking areas in these places. But I want to shout Mitchell and Dance Safe. I mean, they're doing everything in their power to get in these places. I saw we were at Jim and Jam festival in Arizona this last week, and Mitchell's there just spreading the good word, having a table, having a place for people to go, having insanely well trained individuals who are passionate about it and care about it. So yeah, I'm hopeful about the people. The people are trained, the people are motivated, and they are always up to date on what needs to happen, what's going on, any incident that has happened. I got a text the other day about an incident of someone who happened in Miami 2 days ago, or maybe even yesterday. Like the harm reduction community is so connected and so tight and so communicative that about things anywhere. So I'm hopeful about the people. I still have some concerns about actual policy movement itself from a whole, like a grand, like a whole scale of things.
Yeah. So right, it's a big deal, and what we've seen in a lot of places to move this forward outside of policy is people like Dana Larson selling tested clean product in Vancouver. He's a real pioneer there, and who gets busted regularly. And then there's supervised injection sites, which I think are still federally illegal, but they're operating anyway just because they know it's going to straight up reduce deaths and disease spread. And it's just a far more compassionate way to go about it. And they'll operate in like a permanent situation. Yeah, which is amazing. We need a lot more of that. Europe's got a ton more. We got a cameo. That's lovely.
Yeah, my dog.
But yeah, it's amazing, and I hope we can kind of bridge it from like the actual to the policy too. So let's just keep hitting both sides, and I think you're spot on there on policy.
Yeah, there's always pioneers who just, for lack of a better term, to say fuck it, right? And you always need those who are just like, hey, I'm gonna be that person who falls on the sword, so we can build what the blueprint looks like. Because before we can even build a blueprint, we gotta see what it will happen if we were to do this. So yeah, there's some people out there who are taking a risk, knowing the possible outcomes for us to be able to be like, oh, that did work, or that didn't work, or just how we're have to approach this to scale this out. So yeah, it's again, I feel very, very hopeful with some of the people who are involved right now making things happen.
Yeah, right on. Cool, man. Anything else we want to get into? Have people check out maybe?
Well, as always, I'm always going to give a shout to maps.org. I mean, that's we continue to update our website with all types of different things that we have doing. Again, we have our initiatives, the fiscal sponsorship, international therapist education program, membership program coming out, and the first responders. Psychedelic Science 25. Make sure to sign up for the email list. We'll be updating you all about how to be a vendor, how to have a speaker application, how to buy tickets, community partnerships, sponsorships. So that all should be coming soon. So make sure to sign up for that email list. And yeah, always do this call out at the end of everything. Like, Maps is really trying to be just a place for you to have a conversation. Again, I go back to no one buys a yearbook that they can't see themselves in, and there's not anyone who's more powerful to your community than yourself. You will always be able to talk to your community better than I can. So I just ask for you to just tell people about Maps, tell people about your journey if you have had a journey. If you haven't, please reach out to us. Like, I always love hearing stories. So yeah, just be a shining light for your community. If you don't feel comfortable, do that. Reach out to us, and we'll be super happy to send you resources. But this movement, whatever you want to call it, there's so many words and so many arguments about the words. It doesn't even matter. You being able to help your community starts with you and is helped by you. And if we can be a resource in any way possible, please let us know. And we are just pumped to have you and pumped for your support.
All right, Devon. Thanks so much for being here and sharing with the audience, and I hope we can do it again in the future.
Yes. Before we go, Joe,
Yeah.
I gotta give you your flowers, man. Joe, you've been a huge influence in the space. I think, you hold it down. You say what you mean. You say, especially even in rooms where you disagree with many people disagree with you. I think you've had a huge influence both on me. I was listening to you before I even got the Maps. Everyone I talk to listens to this podcast. Joe, you're huge in this space. I hope you know that. I know we can get in the weeds sometime and you don't think about it, but I want you to know you've been very influential and a huge positive impact to the space, and I'm so glad that you're here.
Thanks for saying that, man. I had no idea you were listening before Maps. That's amazing.
Yeah. Who's this Joe guy?
Some weirdo in the hills. All right, man. Thanks so much for that, man. I really hope we can do it again.
Always.